Greetings, class. I'm here to go over the Kendall essay with you guys. I love this essay. I think it's such a strong essay. And what she does is she talks about class and how the media frames class to give us different perspectives. One of the first things, well, she talks about a lot of things, but I just want to talk about television. And usually what I have students do is I have them think about a movie or a TV show that depicts the lower class, middle class, or upper class. And I like to start with the lower class. And in her own words, she says the lower class is often seen as dysfunctional. They're seen as addicts. They're seen as down on their luck, etc., etc. And I think that movies, you might see that. Well, they just took Cops off the air, but I think Cops usually had a very strong depiction of lower class Americans struggling with addiction and crime and things like that. They were perceived as criminals. Generally, you watch a movie or a TV show, any hospital show, you have a crazy homeless person coming in. There's many shows that show that. I remember House had a lot of episodes that did that. And it doesn't, what the essay is saying is that what we do is we see the lower class and we see how they're perceived on television. And we tell ourselves, I never want to be like that. I want to be the middle class, or I want to be the upper class. And what she says is that we don't really see the lower class for who they are on TV. Not every lower class citizen is a drug addict. Not every person who is homeless forever. Not every person who is homeless is crazy. Sure, there's mental health that goes into homelessness, but it would be a sweeping generalization to say that every homeless person has a mental illness. So what she's saying is that we need to see more realities of why people are poor. You never see TV shows that talk about the education levels or the education system in their community, or there's no recreational activities for them to attend to, or the fact that they have to work for their parents in order to help support their family. You don't really see those situations on TV, so you don't really get a true perspective of what's going on. We're just seeing them as criminals or bad people, but she's saying there's more to that. Media has an obligation to show that. And then she also talks about the middle class. In terms of the middle class, she says that the middle class is perceived as lazy, they're drunks, they're arrogant, they're overconfident. The classic example she uses is Homer Simpson. And I think there's a lot of TV shows that show that. And I think she's on to something. Usually you watch middle-class families and they're very dysfunctional. And I don't think we necessarily see middle-class television to show who we are. I know it's a bit controversial, but I would say the middle class works very hard. I think Americans work very hard. And I know we aren't perceived as that globally. We're seen as lazy. But if you ask most Americans, what are they doing? They're working, or they're trying to find work right now. But most people are working. Usually when a semester starts, I said, what did you do this summer? What did you do this fall or winter? And most students say, I worked a lot. And today, the average American is working 47 hours a week because a full-time job doesn't cut it. You have to have a gig. You have to drive for Lyft or Uber Eats or something to just try to survive, especially in a city like San Diego. So I think we work hard. And then the question is, do we ever see that really perceived on television, people working hard? You watch a show like The Office, and in The Office, they're never working. They're at work, but they're never working. And the question is, could that formula work? Because most people don't want to come home and watch somebody work on TV. That sounds like the worst television program ever. But there are a lot of shows like CSI. I don't know if that's still on the air, but Dirty Jobs was a show that showed people working. So maybe it could work. And I think that could show more of what we value. And I think that's a strong statement. And then I'm going kind of middle to backwards in this essay for a reason. I just wanted to talk about class depictions. But she also talks about the upper class. And the upper class, she uses the character of Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton was on TV a long time ago. You could sub her out and put in Kim Kardashian. We're still in the same playing field. She has a great quote by Bell Hooks, and she says that we over-identify with the wealthy. That's on page 475. I think that's such a strong statement, and I think she's right. So what happens is we watch TV, we see the lower class and middle class on TV, and we tell ourselves, I never want to be like them. I want to be the upper class. So what we do is we spend too much. We over-identify them. We're trying to live on their lifestyle, and we can't afford it. It's unattainable. I had a video that called The Story of Stuff that really exemplifies that as well. We're spending too much. We're just spending way too much money trying to compete with people. And somebody like Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian, what they do is they work on their brand. They're not selling themselves, they're selling a brand. So what they do is they package themselves. So you could never be like Kim Kardashian, but you could become that much closer by buying her perfume, buying her clothing line, etc., which makes it perceive like I'm that one step closer to becoming that person. And in essence, it's making us go broke. That's the argument of the essay. There's other parts of this essay I like as well. I like how they talk about how media influences children, and I think that's true. There's a writer for Adbusters magazine. His name is Kali Losney, and he said if you can hook a kid on a brand when they're young, they'll continue to buy that brand for the rest of their lives. And here we see a survey of children saying the number one thing they want to be when they grow up is rich. And I think getting back into the argument of brand affiliation, I think that takes part of early childhood. So we don't grow up and say one day, you know what, I really like Chevy more than Ford. Usually that comes from our parents. And so that shapes our mind. So the argument is if you can get a kid hooked on a brand, they'll continue to buy that brand for the rest of their lives. And on one hand, maybe that's a good thing because brand names can be better. They can last longer, particularly with clothing. But at the same time, brands do cost a lot more money. And sometimes it's either you get knockoff brands and things like that, we get cheaper brands. But we get hooked in this paradigm that's hard to get out of. And so I think she has a really good perspective on what's holding us back from achieving the American dream. And it's not stated, but it's implied. And that is we're spending too much. Our consumer levels are out of control. We're going broke. And America has a misconception. We think that wealth is perceived as what you have, your car, your house, all of these other things. But the argument is that wealth should be perceived as how much you have in the bank. And they did a study in Mother Jones magazine. They said a couple of years ago, they said the average American doesn't have $200 in savings. We probably don't even have that now. But I think that goes back to the argument that wealth is how much you have, not how much you've spent. And I think that's a very strong argument. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post some other videos as well to help guide you through the essay. I want to go for some writing strategies, but I wanted to start this week by giving lectures on the reading so we're clear, so I can guide you through these. Thank you for listening.